The thing that really stood out with her and me was her strength, her physical strength that she had. And she got mad one day and was angry with my grandfather. This was my my grandfather, and he had taken and moved someone into her room where she was living, but she had gotten mad to begin with and took off, said, "I'm not living here no more." Well, within a day or two, he had moved someone else in. Well, she went upstairs, and the story went that she hit the door with her forearm and knocked it off its hinges. That to me was like, wow, man, a girl did that. You know, that was cool. I thought that was neat.
I've been called hillbilly and everything else. I don't care. And them that don't know I'm a hillbilly and they say anything, say I act like a hillbilly, I'd say I am.
You know, maybe I shouldn't even sit on this, really and truly. Because to be really authentic, this is quite disrespectful for me to be sitting on this guy's headstone with my foot over his body.
Okay.
By old bar standards. Maybe I ought to just move over here somewhere and try to get comfortable.
Okay.
Or stand up.
Okay.
Here, what do you want?
Either one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hit it.
During the 1920s, 7 million Appalachian people were forced to leave the mountains with the hope of finding work in the cities. Many obtained jobs, bought houses, and prospered. Others were not so lucky. The Appalachian region stretches from lower New York to as far south as Mississippi and includes parts of 13 states. For Appalachians, the mountains are home. For those outside the region, the mountains are a bountiful source of lumber, textiles, and coal. During the time of the coal boom, Appalachia paid dearly in natural resources and its people. Our ancestors came from Great Britain and other European countries. These immigrants were met by French, Indian, and African people who had already put down roots in the mountains. By the 1950s and 60s, the coal industry began replacing our people with machines that did the job faster and cheaper. We moved from the mountains to cities such as Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, Dayton, and Cincinnati to find work. We needed to provide for our families. The promise of jobs and a new life did not always hold true. We were competing with local people for work and met some resistance. Our culture and beliefs became the object of ridicule. As people attempted to fit in, the remnants of our culture were slowly eroded. Our attachments to the mountains weakened. Appalachian culture is one of the few regional cultures which survive in the United States today. Urban Appalachians have a story to tell. It is the story of a people's creative response to turbulence and change. Appalachian heritage is thriving through the stories, music, and experiences of people you know, your neighbors, and your kin.
Well, the way it was, Dad had been sick all summer. It was something like typhoid fever, but they called it something else down there. And he'd been sick all summer, and he'd been in bed 5 months. Well, when he got up, he couldn't walk, he couldn't do nothing. And just as soon as he could get, so he could walk around in the house, he wanted to leave. And we didn't know that Dad was that dissatisfied down there. And he finally got one of my brother-in-laws, Lester White and Letch Weaver, and they helped him get the wagon ready and get the team hooked up. And you know, they was 2 or 3 days that team wasn't hooked. One that wasn't unhooked from the wagon because they'd been housed up all summer and they was mean as devils. And you know what way we eat? I'd stir up a fire. Mom fixed flour and stuff first, so all we'd have to do is stir it up and put it in the frying pan, and it was those little old pancakes. And we lived off of things like that the whole 13 days. But now we had to take care of Dad, and I was just about 12 years old too. It was a little greenhorn for me. I know when we come over the hill there in Covington, and it was getting dark and the lights was on in the city, and that was something. I was going somewhere. I was born on Horse Creek in North Carolina, and that was, well, I didn't have a birth certificate, but that's what they put on that thing and sent to the Census Bureau for. My mother was also born further down towards Junior Clark's. And Dad was born in Kentucky, Pulaski County, Kentucky. We had it pretty good. To be a big family now, Mom and Dad, they evidently had it hard. You know, to be as many children as they were. I had one brother, 11 sisters. There's 12 girls and 1 boy. There are only 4 of us living. And we're all old enough with a banana peeling and ready to slide right on in. I come here in 24. My brother lived here. Well, his wife still lives up in Reading. Bette and John lived here, and Matt and Elise and Grace, they all lived here. I went and stayed with Lockie and Joan a while. Of course, Matt wasn't married. I went over at Blaine's, and May took me up Stearns and Foster's, and I got a job. They just hired me. They didn't ask me, well, they asked me how old I was, and May had told me before I went up there to tell them that I was 18, and I did. And I was only about 16. Well, there's a lot of them just like me that didn't bring nothing, but whenever they got here, they've got ambition. I had enough ambition to go after what I wanted. That's enough, ain't it? Yeah, days that I feel good, I cook. And I put it that way, and whenever I don't feel good, like, that's those sweet apples. It takes them a little longer to cook. Come on in here, Mommy's in here. They won't nobody hurt Topper. They won't nobody hurt Topper. He can even sleep with Mommy tonight. Come on. I was married in 1926. We both worked at Stearns and Foster's, and he was a young man. Of course, I was just a kid picking at him. Threw a peach seed at him, and he looked up and laughed, and he told a girl that was from his hometown that he wanted her to find out who I was. And she come running, and I told her who I was. So the next time we went out, he was down there to meet me. We went over to the park and walked around. And that very same day, some little boy drowned in the canal, you know, where the expressway goes down. That was at the canal then. This boy that I worked with at General Box, he used to call me Hillbilly. I didn't care. Well, we went across that mountain. It's on top of a big mountain, and it shows all the mountains for miles around. And I took a picture of that, and I brought it back to him, and that was the first thing I done. I showed it to Kroger, and I said, now right here is where I was raised, and I don't want you calling me a hillbilly anymore. And you know, he didn't. He seen he was aggravating me. My lawyer, since Pop died, come in here one time, and I'd had to have 3 teeth pulled because I was eating some peanut brittle, broke my teeth in front. And I just had them pulled out and hadn't got no plate yet, and he come in here one day and he said, Agnes, when are you going to get your teeth? He said, you look like a hillbilly. I said, well, did you know it? I am. And I think it embarrassed him. Yeah, I said to him, did you know it? I am. No, I've never denied that I was a hillbilly. I don't care who knows it. Well, that's the pie. That's hot, but I think I'm going to taste of it. I needed a little bit of salt in that to bring out the flavor.
Mountain people can't read, can't write, don't wear shoes, don't have teeth, don't use soap, and don't talk plain. They beat their kids, beat their friends, beat their neighbors, and they beat their dogs. They live on cowpeas, fatback, and 20 acres straight up and down. They don't have money. They do have fleas, overalls, tobacco patches, shacks, shotguns, food stamps, liquor stills, and at least 6 junk cars in the front yard, right? Well, let me tell you, I'm from here. I'm not like that, and I'm damn tired of being told I am.
This fella had little to drink. It was hotter than hell, as towns can get, in an old wooden building, you know. And this one fella come in, and he'd had a few drinks. And he comes in and says, "George, where's your bucket of water?" And he said, "There's some ice water right there." And this fella took the dipper and took 2 or 3 big dippers out of that. And when he got through, he says, "Ah, by God, the man who invented ice water sure knowed his business." I was there and heard it. Oh, I thought it was wonderful. I was born in Appalachia, eastern Kentucky, Owsley County specifically, to a family of 7 children and my parents. And due to their interest, we were to get a good education. So we ended up school at Berea at Eastern. Then following service, I went into medicine and then ended up in northern Kentucky, where I practiced medicine and now retired. My wife and I moved to northern Kentucky in 1953, and at that time we had 2 small boys. We have had 2 since. And interestingly, early, they got interested in their background. And they get the biggest kicks out of going down and seeing how it's changing, which we think is necessary, but it's not really desirable, because I just liked it the way it was. This territory was filled with Appalachian people straight out, people from home. And a large number of them worked at St. Luke Hospital. And it was interesting that after I came up here and settled in medicine, I had numerous persons from in Ohio, as far as Cleveland, Michigan, and various places, call and ask if they could see me. People whom I'd grown up with come down and wondering about the type of medical care they were getting. And I think in every case they were getting adequate medical care, but they really were very much like me, just hadn't become completely acclimatized to the city life. It was such a change. It was such a fantastic change for us. When they came in, I'd say, "What part of Breathitt County are you from?" They'd say, "How do you know?" And I'd say, "Your accents, you know." And I think the accents, believe it or not, are pretty local. They're local into Breathitt County. They're localized to Owsley County and to Clay County, the counties that I've had my particular interest in. It was always interesting, these people would come in, they might be holding their side together where they're sore, been hurt or something, but hey, I got a story to tell you, and this is what I wanted. These are the neatest people. And that's what I run into in the hills still. I just have the most fascinating people I know down there. My hobby has always been eastern Kentucky. I love the stories, I loved the people, and the way we lived. and I'm still utterly fascinated. It has been a real marvelous thing to go back and see the oldsters you knew, to see the oldsters you never saw before, but instantly you become a friend with because you're one of them. Once they identify with my family, who was a merchant in the county, everyone's opened up with stories, events, and lots of photographs. I knew a lot of the oldsters, but what I basically did when I had a day off, I took a pickup truck or my car and I just found a back road. And anytime I saw an older man, an old woman sitting in a garden, sitting on a porch, I'd get out. And most of them, in fact, knew of or heard of my dad. And I'd say I was born and raised in Boonville. That was enough to open up something that if I said I was a Cincinnati native or a Cleveland native, been a little reluctant to open up. And then we've gotten on to, I like their family background and so forth, how they lived, and they love to tell you that because they loved it. It was a great life, really.
Mama, my yard is made of cobblestones. A wooden fence guards the 2 rose bushes, our golden retriever, and us. I remember barbed wire fences, cow pastures, rolling hills, and playing softball with my cousins. The air was fresher then, free. My yard is squeezed between 2 other homes. Sometimes I can't breathe here, Mamaw. The air smells of car fumes, and the sky is pushed between the narrow expanse of the wooden fence. I long for trees and open spaces. Sometimes I feel so small.
Okay, honey, it's gonna be your turn next. Now, okay, now you pitch it up. You pitch it up there, and
that's cheating,
now, well, now what? She can't get it all the way, so I have to help her.
No, you can help her.
Go ahead.
You cannot.
Oh. There. 2 of us together. I'm living the pleasure of being a grandpa, and I know that the memories that I have of my childhood are memories that somehow, some way, I need to preserve and pass down to them as their heritage
Give him a phone.
and the legacy that I owe to them. Those memories are their legacy.
Yeah.
Wait a minute and let me, and Gaga will take you on his lap. Now then, we'll sit up here.
Heather. Watch Brittany. Come on. Watch Brittany.
She needs changing. Okay.
Hi, Brittany.
You go with my move. Had a little accident, didn't you? Okay. It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, it's okay, honey. One of the lowest points that I had possibly was losing my job at work. Progress and whatever else you might call it, started eliminating jobs, and mine happened to be one of the ones that the company felt they could do without, so I got, my job was eliminated and I no longer had the job to work at, and I was offered the job of going back to Airlie, and I wasn't totally out of work, but I had to take something like a $600 a month cut in pay to get it, but I didn't have any other job. So naturally I took the job, and it was very depressing to me to starting all over again, but the depression was I felt like well, the natural feeling of losing something, I guess it was. But anyway, I didn't let that depression get me down for very long. When there was an opening and a chance to go into another department, the one that I'm working in today in the same plant. I took it, and I went and I worked up to one of the top positions in the department as operating engineer. At the time I was a helper, what they call a maintenance helper, and then I got the license, state license to fire boilers. The fireman's license is your first license that you get. I got that one, and man, was I very proud of that. I was 50 years old when I got that firing license, and I was more proud of that little piece of paper than a youngster in high school graduating, getting his high school diploma would be. My wife and I have lived at this present home for the past almost 30 years that we've lived here. I chose moving where I could find a job. Back in 1951, when I first came to Cincinnati, I came up here really just to work for the summer, and then I was going to go back to school. It was thrilling, it was exciting. Cincinnati had sounds, Cincinnati had smells, Cincinnati had sights that were intriguing to me, that was interesting, that I wanted to get out and see. When I woke up in the morning, I could hear the streetcars clanging up and down Vine Street. Over in the alley, there was an ice man. He'd deliver ice to people, and he would sing out ice. And then, of course, there were voices that just became noises and mumbles, and it was near Washington Park, and I used to go over to Washington Park, and it was my little connection back with rural America, to see the trees, to sit on the benches and look at watch the pigeons. The pigeons, I kind of like pigeons. I know they're pests, but I used to buy bags of food at a little food store and go over and feed the pigeons in Washington Park. I didn't look at them as pests. I looked at them as beautiful birds, and they would fly down so gracefully on the ground, pick up the food I would give to them. In Washington Park, while the squirrels played, and that excited me to watch the animals that I was so familiar with out there playing and had taken their place without fear among us. That was something really exciting for me to see. Cincinnati had an attraction to me that it's hard to describe. It just seemed like home to me. And more now it is my home. There is no back home anymore to me. When I go visit with my folks in Tennessee, it's not like going back home. It's visiting relatives.
It's changing here, I know it. Everywhere you look, somebody's putting in a new road, a new house, a new business, a new something or another. And I know we're growing and we need some of that, but, well, we're changing the beauty out of things. It's not like you can't tear down a mountain anymore. You can, and people do. So what's one mountain, more or less? Level off the top, so we might have something to farm. Never thought much about progress until now. And I certainly never thought of myself as against it, but it's turning out I am against it, and it's not because progress is bad, it's because progress, the way we're doing it, is so ugly. A mountain is beautiful. Now, I'm young, I know that, and I'm probably rash, but I swear I hope I die before the only thing that's left that takes your breath away around here is the smell.
Well, originally my family first moved into Franklin, Ohio, because we had distant relatives there, and we moved into Franklin, Ohio for a time. We stayed with them for a little while, and my father didn't come up here stone broke. He had a little money, and so we stayed with them for a while until he could find a cheap apartment. and it was no problem getting a job. I mean, you know, it was right before World War, or a little bit after World War II, and so they instantly hired you. Originally, they wasn't received too well because they just wasn't received too well because there was too much of a difference in culture. Like, you know, they went to a one-room schoolhouse and they was in the 8th grade, and they called chimneys chimleys, and they called shovels scoops, and or scoopy, and they wasn't received too well. There was a difference in culture, but the country couldn't have done without them because they was hard-working people. And when they come up here, they made many an old city boy ashamed. What? All I got to do is sit here on this thing here and put this little screw in here every once in a while, and then every couple hours you can bring me a cup of coffee and a big cold soda pop? Well, hell, they thought they had it made, you know? And so, you know, you bring an old boy that's been used to getting up at dawn and working almost till dark in a tobacco patch or hoeing or thinning corn, well, why, he had it made. And so no wonder the locals didn't like him. The whole farmer outworked them. When I was a senior in high school, we lived next to people, and all those little houses was together. This person didn't like that person, and this person drank too much, or this person was always fussing and fighting with his wife. I could care less. You know, trees and grass and countryside is a lot more pleasing than hearing this. And those people have lived there for 2 and 3 generations. They knew no different. They were concerned about which nice house they buy a couple blocks over, and what job this kid had and what he was making. And it was just a different lifestyle for me, and I just didn't like it. Maybe that made me respect the country more. But being locked up in a high populated area and elevators and seeing the business world and so on and so forth, and maybe that made me even love the country more. Well, I don't mean to be a smart aleck, but it's quite obvious. If you look around here, it's peaceful, it's content. And I come back here pretty often. I'll probably average sometimes once, sometimes a couple times a month. It's a nice, snug feeling to go up here and have all this peace and contentment and not have anything to bother you or worry about or anything. And so that's a basis of why that I elect to retire down here. And it's so peaceful, and it's just, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I got the blood in me, and it's just an overlooked paradise. The country's very gentle and kind to a hard worker. As soon as you see somebody down here, you say, well, what's his name? What family did he come from? Well, he's a Sparks. He's a Newton. He's a Richardson. And he says, oh, I see. Well, his daddy was a real good, honest person. If your daddy was a horse thief, or that's an example, if your daddy wasn't a good, straight-laced old boy, then you got to prove yourself back into the society. You got to say, okay, Daddy, Grandpa might have thought up bad, but that was them. That ain't me. So society's fair, and they judge you for face value. If you work hard and you get along, you're good for your word, well, you can get anything you want down here. Appalachian culture, most of them think that we drink moonshine and shoot one another, and brawl in bars or whatever. But it's not that way. It's not that way, you know. Family reunion started about 20 years ago. First we had it down here when my grandpa was alive, and we all come to their house. And then we would move to the Estill County Fairgrounds, and then we come back here in the last 2 or 3 years back to the old Station Camp Christian Church. I'm not that real religious of a person, but it's back where it should be. It's back home. Place is rich in history. It's rich because we was all little boogers and little children. We played around here and we stayed with our grandparents and so on and so forth. And I kind of growed up with all of them, you know, because when I was a kid, I was the only child, and they taught me to share and be equal and their standards. But, you know, we'd just go back from forth to house, you know. And sometimes I ate with some of the people that you met, and sometimes they made me work a little bit. It's like any family reunion. If you're in the middle of New York, the middle of Chicago, you see these old timers and they come in and you love them. And memories and fond memories come back, you know, of a long time ago. It hurts me very dearly because they still call me Raymond Dale Newton. As far as they're concerned, I'm still about 6 or 7 years old. Yeah. And here I am, 53, and time passes very, very quick. We're old, we're an ancient people. Most of us come out of Virginia in here, and this was the new land. As far as I know, I think we're a unique culture. I really do. Our second and third generation children, they're going to come back here and they're going to say, well, there's where Grandpa lived and there's where Mom lived. I think there'll be plenty of them back here. I think they're going to love the country. I think they're going to take care of it. I think the people that's 15, 20 years older than me, about 20 years older than me, all they remember is all the hard, bad times down here. How they had to hoe and work with mules and raise their crops and survive to get by. But that second and third generation didn't have to get up at daylight and work all day long and sweat and earn, you know, to just scratch out a living. It's good living, but it was a hard life. Life was better down here. Had the mountains, the creeks, the valleys. So I lived in Ohio, I don't know, we moved out of here when I think I was just about in the first grade of school. And I didn't like it, personally, to start out with. I spent 9 months a year in Ohio, and then the life was so much different that I come down here and I lived as long as I could in the summertime when I got out of school, see. So I'd always come down here and roam these mountains, and it was a better life. And so I lived approximately 2 and 3 months a year until my mommy and daddy, which I love dearly, until they come down here and pick me up and took me back. Okay. So I lived a third of my life down here, I guess. The people are good. Southerners, you're just starting to get into the real Southerners down here. I don't want to say they're prejudiced, and I'm not saying any of that, but you've known this person for years, you've known his daddy for years, you've known the grandfather for years, and it just seems like that you walk up and you're instantly accepted by what a generation or two done behind you. And so, yeah, the people are beautiful. They beg to be your friends. They beg to help you. But that's changing pretty much, but it's still here, and it'll be here for quite a while.
I'm asking you to come back home before you lose your chance of seeing me alive. You already missed your daddy, you missed your Uncle Howard, you missed Lucille. I kept him and I buried him. You showed up for the funerals. Funerals are the easy part. You even missed that dog you left. I dug him a hole and put him in it. It was a Sunday morning, but dead animals don't wait no better than dead people. My mama used to say she could feel herself running short of the breath of life. Well, so can I. And I am blessed tired of burying things I love. Somebody else can do that job for me. You'll come back here then. You come for funerals. I'd rather you come back now and got my stories. I've got whole lives of stories that belong to you. I could fill you up with stories. Stories I ain't told nobody yet. Stories with your name, your blood in them. Ain't nobody gonna hear 'em if you don't, and you ain't gonna hear 'em unless you get back home. When I am dead, it will not matter how hard you press your ear to the ground.
I seen a picture of her. I never knew that she was so beautiful, because I always saw her as my grandma, sort of wrinkled up, you know, and we called her Ninny. But I seen this picture of her when she was in her mid-20s to late 20s, I suppose it was, and she was just gorgeous. I thought, wow. She gave me this big box of tapes. It was so neat. But on her tapes, they'd have they'd have the television songs and the radio songs, but you'd hear her talking to her bird and talking to my Uncle Charlie and saying, "You're not doing this right," or this and that. I mean, she didn't really yell and have this big boastful voice, but you could tell the irritation in her voice, you know. And or she'd be talking to her baby and she'd go, "Oh, pretty boy, you know." And I'm listening to all these tapes, these Christian tapes, because not so much that I liked the music was on them, because they really didn't always do that much for me, but I could hear her voice on these tapes. So anyway, I remember that. That's neat. I thought that was neat.
Some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away.
Yeah, that's about the right speech you had. I have sang since I was a little girl. My dad always encouraged me to sing. When I was singing Christmas songs after Christmas. And everybody said, "What are you singing Christmas songs after Christmas for?" And my dad would say, "Well, it's before Christmas. So it's better if she sings them before Christmas." I mean, I'd be singing them 8 months before Christmas. I wanted to sing so bad, and it was like a burning fire inside me, and finally, I guess I was allowed to sing, because you know, you just don't go in someplace and start singing. They have to realize that you can, you know, and so I don't know. that desire, and trying not to be too boastful, trying not to be too pushy. I just sort of stayed back in the background, and but all the time thinking, I want to sing, because I've always sang.
Like a bird from prison bars is flown, I fly away, I fly away, oh glory, I fly away in the morning, when I die, hallelujah, by and by, I fly away.
When I first started singing Appalachian music, it was about 4 years ago. And I met this man. He was so neat. I heard him singing, and it just blessed my heart. He was a tenor, and he sang in trios and things like that. But he was this tenor, and he sang Two Coats. I don't know if you've ever heard that song before, but it goes. Two coats before me, and old and new. I could have had either, so what should I do? One coat was ragged, all tattered and torn. The other, a new one, had never been worn. I'll tell you the best thing I ever did do. I laid off the old coat and put on the new. Basically, he told me I had to practice saying a word a certain way because we were saying it two different ways. He was saying it in a very hick way. And I was saying it properly, you know, and it was preaching. See, I'd say it preaching, and he'd say preaching. So we had to say it together. So when we first started singing this music, he would say to me, you know, you must be, your background has to be from down in Kentucky. You have to be. Your voice was just made to sing this kind of music. Well, that stuck with me, but I really did not connect it at all. But I started singing this music with him, and I just grew to love it. I mean, it's just so unique and different. That's what I really love. It's different. I guess the old coming back into the new is what makes it different.
Lord help me. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear. And grace my fears relieved.
I started going to a poetry writing group, and I guess I didn't really recognize the term of Appalachian, although I'd heard it. And I didn't have any idea that I was. When I started thinking about my roots, I guess I was about 19 years old, and it was when I came back to the Lord. And I wanted to know about Him. I wanted to know about how was I related to Him? How was I related to the whole picture? That was my experience with my faith. It was something else that's lost. Because I know I had in my background that there were preachers. My granddad, my uncle, great uncles, they were preachers. I never knew that until just recently. I mean, they loved the Lord and had a very strong relationship with Him. Well, I do, so I do now. So I think that's sort of like a way of the Lord taking care of my heritage for me, or taking care of me and bringing me back to where I was at one time, or where, my family came from, bringing me back to that.
You gotta pay $1,000.
I didn't know that till just recently where my grandma was raised, and I got to see it, and that to me was really neat. We drove over a canyon to where my grandma was raised, the house, which all was left is a foundation, and a creek called Short Creek. And the creek is just beautiful. The creek is, but the thing that really disturbed me when I got there is there was actually graffiti on the creek.
On the
Where they had painted graffiti. You know how you see on the walls around here, Susan loves so-and-so, and well, that's what they had painted on this big cavern, this really nice cavern, and underneath there's water that runs underneath it. You can go back inside and it's like a little cave, and there's sand dunes. But outside it, there's this creek, and you have this great big, so it's like a big wall, and you can walk up on it, and it's really real nice size. It's really neat looking. And they took me to a graveyard where Sears and Whitakers, which is my grandmother's background, are all buried. I mean, it was beautiful. It was a real pretty, and I felt like it was part of me. I don't know why I felt like it was part of me. Actually, I felt like I wanted to cry when I was there, because it's just something that's something that I feel, I guess maybe for my grandma. But at the same time, it doesn't really connect. It's almost like there's something that's lost that is mine. And I don't know, you feel sort of angry. I started cleaning up, and when I started cleaning up, Millie and Tom started cleaning up. So I guess something else I did that they thought was sort of funny, but afterwards they did the same thing, was I went and took a rock off the pile.
Give me a break!
That the foundation was laid.
Is that enough? I ain't good at
And I don't know, it took me about 20 minutes, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes to pick out one rock off the pile. And my idea is to take this rock and go to the next family reunion and have them all sign it from that side of the family. And so then I can have names.
You may borrow any amounts you need from the bank.
Never, my mom or dad remember anything, because I've been doing this to them for a long time. I suppose for 10 years. I have been taking little bits and pieces. And I have them who knows where in this house, but they're somewhere in an envelope or a notebook, bits and pieces and stories, and putting them down. And so now it's natural when they remember something. Oh, Jenny, make sure you put down this. I think we might have been related to so-and-so and so-and-so. And so they're telling me these things, and it's like, I'm not even ready to do it right then, and I've got to stop and I've got to go write this down because they want me to do it. So I guess it's sort of catching. It's sort of catching. It wasn't important to me in the same way when I was a kid. I didn't understand it when I was a kid. The only thing that was important to me were those spectacular stories. Those were important to me. And now I guess it's a broader picture. I want to see a broader picture. More detail about it.
My house is made of wood. Concrete touches each corner. Asphalt meets the curb out front. In back, there's a junkyard. My bedroom has a window. Fire trucks shake the window as they lumber past. I watch my neighbor talk to an empty chair. At 3 a.m., I can hear Waylon Jennings from the neighbor's backyard. But when I dream, my house is surrounded by daffodils and iris. There's trees and grass that needs to be cut. And the only noise you hear is the creak of the front porch swing as I sit breaking beans.